have quite an array of authors here for you to talk to, so I'll have them introduce themselves real quick. So I'll tell you what they're famous for, and then we can all clap Andy Parks in.
Are we on Bradbury yet?
Walk faster. Faster.
Come on. He's got the hat, it's fine. Okay, so let's start with, what is it you write?
I'm Eliane. I'm a New York Times bestseller of thrillers, fantasy, and science fiction.
Great.
That's me.
Okay, I'm Dan Willis. I used to write for Wizards of the Coast, their Dragonlance brand, for their young adult books. And I'm currently working on a project with Tracy Hickman of that fame, which will be out shortly, called Dragons of the Confederacy, a steampunk Civil War story.
I'm Josh Vogt. I'm a fantasy author and freelance writer, kind of a jack of all trades. I have 2 novels debuting this May. One is a Pathfinder Tales novel, Forge of Ashes, which is a sword and sorcery adventure. And the other is a darkly humorous urban fantasy called Enter the Janitor, which is about a supernatural sanitation company.
I'm Andy Parks. I've written a lot of comic books, and I've written 3 original graphic novels, which are big bag comic books. 2 historical fiction things, and 1 South American kidnapping, more violent, pretty.
I think we have to show.
Take it. I don't need it.
I'm not that loud. So. I'm Alex Grecian, and I write the Murder Squad series for Putnam. It's historical thrillers, and I also write comic.
So obviously you all came here to gain wisdom from the authors, so let's start asking your questions. What do you guys want to know? Come up to the microphone. Somebody.
We'll just talk about Ray Bradbury.
Yeah, we can talk about it. We should say that Ray Bradbury's awesome.
Hi, I do a lot of writing by sometimes dabbling in fantasy, science fiction, or just historical fiction. The problem that I always get is I get caught up in world building that it takes me the longest time to put anything to paper. So I'll have notebooks and notebooks full of the details of the world, and I'll have a 3-page short story, and that's all I have to show for it. Do you have any advice as to how? When should I officially cut myself off? When do I need to stop building and just start telling?
I'd say any time now.
At your second notebook.
I think world building is fine, but I think for the most part, you have to just find out what you want your story, whether it's a short story or novel, what you want it to be about. And that doesn't mean the world, it doesn't even mean the characters so much. It means that for me, and I know Alex works this way, it means a thematic flow through. Something that your novel says in the end. Something it says about humanity, or something it says about your characters. Just something very simple, like the theme of my second graphic novel was that art is hard. You can draw a lot from the artist. And then, after you have that theme, you'll figure out what you need to tell that story. You know what I mean? But at some point, you have to put aside all the paraphernalia and get down to the heart of what it is you want to say and build around that.
The very fact that you're asking that question is a good sign that it's time. It is very easy to world build without end because it kind of makes you feel like you're writing without actually producing a story. Christine Brush and Dean Wesley Smith have a bit of a slogan: would I be better off writing? Ask yourself anytime you're doing something, whether it's social media, whether it's world building, whether it's whatever, and if the answer is yes, then you know you can start investing your time in the actual story and the writing. If you have the material there, just start.
It sounds a little like what you've got is a really neat setting without a story to go with it. And maybe what you need to do ahead of the story or the world building is get your outline down, just a basic. This is my interesting person, and here's what he or she is doing, and here's the bad guys, and here's what they want, and that kind of thing.
I guess the problem that I run into is that while world building, I get caught up in tangent stories to build it, and I lose track of that first story. Like I try to get a central idea, build a world around it, well, supporting systems start to become more important, and eventually, I don't know what story I'm trying to tell anymore.
If you build your world, that's all that matters. The reader doesn't need to know everything.
Yeah.
So once you know it, stop and write your story.
And if you have that main idea, like I was talking about, everything that goes into that book should contribute to that main idea. If you come up with something cool that doesn't contribute to that, just put it on a shelf and let it be part of something else. But don't get side, just set it aside. Leave it.
Hi. I would like to hear how you broke into publishing, and if you have any advice about how to approach publishers and the different ways to do that, which one was more effective. So.
I got started 5 years ago as an editor at indie publishing houses. So they would send me manuscripts, and I would be working on my own manuscript, and then that was my way in. So then I sent them my first manuscript, and it was total crap. And so they said, we aren't going to publish this. And then I sent them my second one after I was like tons better than the first one, and they're like, this is total crap. And so I'm like, okay, third time's the charm. And I sent them my third manuscript, and they're like, this is better, but it's still total crap. So I had to write 4 manuscripts that were all very bad manuscripts. That was me learning how to write. And then the 5th one is not complete total crap, and they published it. And that's how the first book got started. But honestly, every single book has its own story, you know, with like publishers and editors. Like it's really kind of, it's kind of fascinating how it's not like there's one road and then you just stay on that road throughout publishing. I'm afraid that you have to almost start again on almost every single book. So, but editing was a great step for me to get into the publishing world.
I've told a story for years that you've seen this when you go to Vegas. There's a big wheel that you spin on some of the gambling games. I said that if you ask on any group of authors, how did you get into publishing, you'll get a different story from everyone, because it's like the universe has just an infinitely big wheel, and anytime you get into publishing a certain way, that way just gets taken off the wheel. But I said that's a lie, because the way I got into publishing, the story I call is, and they hated it. And it's exactly the same. I got an offer for an anthology from some people that I knew, and I sent them, this is Wizards of the Coast. I knew some of them through some other contacts. They said, we're putting together this Dragonlance anthology. Why don't you write a story for it? And I did, and they hated it. And this is complete crap, send something else. And so I sent something else. And they said, well, we like the place that you put this story, because nobody's written a story in this place before, and your take is really interesting, but your story is garbage. Okay, so I wrote another one. And they said, well, now we like the place of the characters, but what they're doing is stupid. So forth and so on, until finally we got the story that appeared in an anthology, the longest name in history, Dragons of the War of Souls, I think was the subtitle of it. And yeah, from there they were like, well, you know, you're an okay writer, I guess, but you're easy to work with. Why don't you send us an idea for this novel? And so that's how I got into publishing. And if it sounds so far that the way you get into publishing is by editing humbly and quietly in your little corner, then that's probably it. Maybe we discovered the secret.
It is a big deal of just working hard, continuing to keep writing, keep improving along the way, and start submitting places. If you're asking, obviously, more the traditional side of publishing versus self-publishing or indie publishing, those are huge other conversations to have. I got started by getting short stories published here and there, and then I began freelancing full-time. So my freelancing had nothing to do with my fiction until I got started freelancing for game companies. And then by doing work with game companies, I sold fiction to the one that eventually bought Forge of Ashes from, or bought my pitch for it. So that was my kind of unique path of working on my fiction while freelancing, which eventually dovetailed together and got me that first novel. And I have a lot of different irons in the fire, and that's what I like to do, is diversify as much as I can and see what opportunities come along the way.
I kept taking these little steps. I started as a comic book artist because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't really think college that much, so I just tried that. And then I started after a while, I was good at that and thought it's not as exciting as it once was. I want to try writing. Because I knew publishers, I was able to kind of slide in sideways. And then I got a little connection to the prose world because I started adapting novels to graphic novels. Now I'm trying to make more release into the prose world. It's all just been a process of kind of sneaking in various ways and pushing myself through the door a little harder.
Yeah, I wrote 2 novels that I didn't know what to do with. I knew I needed a literary agent, and I couldn't figure out how to get one. So I knew some guys like Andy who did comic books, and thought that might be an easier road to take. So I broke into comic books, and through that I ended up with a literary agent. And I still never did anything with those first 2 novels, but my 3rd novel, he was able to set up an auction for, and 2 days later I had a multi-book deal with Penguin Random House. So.
The one theme you're hearing among all this, just so you know, is persistence.
Yeah.
And continuing to work like 2, 3, 4 novels, however many it takes, always looking for ways in, no matter how much rejection you face.
Right,
Because
and I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, your end goal should
Go back through it again. I mean, how do you kind of come to grips with the vision and get started? What's that process like?
Alex, you got a process.
Well, kind of what Andy said earlier. I'm a seat of your pants kind of guy. I never outline, so I jump in and write the whole thing. But usually my novels are longer than they end up being. Anything that doesn't fit my theme, any chapter or section, I cut out, and I'm pretty merciless. Other than that, I'm going through, I print out a draft because revising on the screen doesn't work for me. And then I just go through it and try to fix all my clumsy phrases and sentences. Maybe I get halfway there before I send it to my editor.
I don't really know how to tackle the structural stuff because when I wrote my first novel recently, I don't know, I labored so over the structure that I didn't feel like it needed a major rework. So I revised once on my screen, and I revised once on a printout, and then I revised once reading it out loud, which was the most painful, but also probably worth it.
Reading out loud is incredibly useful for editing.
And I asked Alec, it hurts. It's really bad. The words are not good. And I said, the words aren't any good. Does it ever get better? And he said, no, that's why we drink.
And your editor does too, right?
Yeah, I would start big and go small. Look at the big overarching issues, because it doesn't matter, the small issues like the technical polish and all that kind of stuff, if you have a hugely flawed section, it doesn't matter how technically polished it is, you're going to have to throw it out and revise it massively anyways. So deal with the plot, the characters, the pacing, and all that, and then polish it up. Give it a good buff and shine once all that's taken care of.
But don't let it overwhelm you. You made the thing. Just jump in and spank it.
And congratulations on finishing.
Yes.
That's awesome.
What are some challenges that you experience when writing for comics or graphic novels that someone writing prose wouldn't really ever think about?
Well, I was kind of lucky, I think, when I started writing my novel. I think, it helps when you're writing prose to have a good visual sense. Because I worked a long time as an artist, I never write a comic book script without thinking if I can't have a picture of how it might work in my head, I don't write it. And that's crucial. A lot of people, when they go to a comic book script, they aren't thinking about what is actually going to have to be drawn. There are simple things like you can't draw multiple actions in one panel. That's right. Hopefully you get past that early on. But there are planes to a picture that are limited. There are things that can focus your attention in each picture that are limited. And you need to be very focused on what will work, what is possible visually. It doesn't mean you're doing a layout and telling the artist exactly how to do it. It just means I thought of one way to do it. That means my artist can probably figure out a way to do it too. Also, I preach this a lot when I do talks about how to make graphic novels or comics. One of the unique strengths in the medium is that we have a very peculiar and interesting way of controlling how the reader moves through the page that you don't necessarily have exactly the same way in prose or film, even though they're similar art forms. By how we structure our panels and by how we build each page, we speed at which you move through and how you're interpreting that time. I can hit you like this with action, or I can slow things down in a way that's really unique. You need to think about that a lot, or you're wasting a big potential in the medium.
Thank you.
That kind of raises an interesting question too. How do you control pacing when you're writing now?
They're very different. They're so, so different.
Yeah.
For me at least, novels, and I don't know, have you written Vogt or?
I've written novels. I was starting to work on a graphic novel and realized I was just jumping into something I had no clue.
Read a lot of 30-year-old Frank Miller comics.
Yeah, it's so much more restrictive, the format. I find it much harder to write a comic book than a novel.
How do you get past a writer's block?
There you go.
Write something else.
I'm controversial in the fact that I don't believe in writer's block. If I don't write, I don't get paid. If someone has a contract, I will write. I must write. That's how I make a living. And it is, I believe that those who suffer with writer's block, this is a very big generalization, are, yes, it can be hard to come up with an idea. It can be hard to develop a scene and figure out what to do next and all that. But those people who are like, yeah, I've been having writer's block for the past 2 years, I have to whatever, it's like, no, you don't have the motivation. The proper motivation is not in place. When you have the right motivation in place, you will write. That's my belief.
Set a goal for yourself. Set a word goal. Say you have to write 200 words a day, 500 words a day, 2,000 words a day, which is my goal. And try to write that many words, even if they're not any good. Just keep writing.
I find it's really painful to admit sometimes, but usually when I'm stuck, it's because I'm trying to do something stupid. And you just have to back out and go, well, this whole scene is silly, and I need to approach this from a different way. And your brain is telling you that on some level. You just know this is not going to work.
When I have writer's block, it usually comes from two things. Like when I sit in front of the computer and I'm just like dead, that's what writer's block is like for me. Then it's either something personal in my life, it's messing with my headspace, and then it's just healthy to deal with that in a positive way. So, you know, I'll try to fix that problem or be able to work through it. So the biggest one is like dealing with a personal issue, but usually it's because people are busy, you know, and since I get paid to write, then I have to do it no matter what. But another thing is to find out like why you love your story again. So you go back to why you love writing, and sometimes for me, I'll just pick up a book that I love. And I'll read that. I'll be like, this is why I write. I love this. Or I'll watch a TV show that's just incredible at story, and then I want to make my own story again. So just go back to why you want to write, and then if you're too busy to write, then maybe simplify something in your life, and that will also help with writer's block.
Take a walk. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I try
your
to.
story while you're walking around and looking at trees.
That's big. I find there are certain activities like driving, taking a walk with the dog while I have music on or something. Anything that frees my mind up enough that I'm almost focused on another task, but it's not too absorbing, will kind of free my mind up and let me think about the story properly without just pounding it into my brain like a nail.
Thomas Edison had a motto, and it's a quote from an English doctor. I can't remember the English doctor's name, but the quote goes like this. He said, there's nothing that a man won't do to avoid the real work of thinking. And I've discovered that all writer's block is, for me, is writer's laziness. And so the trick there is, you know, butt in chair, fingers on keys, sit there, and eventually your brain will go, this is boring, let's do some of that writing stuff. So that's how I get past that.
So again, we're back to the theme of persistence and not giving up. So let's keep an eye on that. Please.
Hi guys. So going back to the whole topic of editors, and also a lot of writers I know talk about how invaluable it is for them to have critique partners. How do you have any ideas of like, because to me it just seems Like, I have no idea how to find a critique partner and also an editor who understands, who I just imagine it would be hard to find someone who understands what I'm trying to do with my writing and really get that and be able to work with me on that.
Well, alpha readers and editors are gotta be different people. You don't want your alpha readers to be your editors, although they will tell you, hey, you know what, I kind of fell asleep in this part of your story. You know, you do that from 2 or 3 of them, you know you have a problem. They're good at finding the general problems, unless you've got somebody who's just really good, in which case they need to be your editor. In the professional world, your editor is somebody they assign you. Your editor is Bob. Bob isn't going to get you. It doesn't matter. What Bob is going to do is make your book shine. That's Bob's job. Hopefully he's good at it. Don't worry, you're worried about finding a soulmate in writing, and I don't think you need to be. I think that's going to get in your way. Because you want your book to be broadly accessible. If your book is only accessible to this narrow category of people, you won't have good sales. So yeah, don't sweat that detail so much.
Are you doing more traditionally or looking more for indie publishing?
At this point, I'm trying to finish my, as Chuck Monday would say, finish your stuff.
Yeah,
kids. Because I have a very short attention span, and so it's very easy for me to start stuff and then get attracted to the next shiny story. So getting to the end is like really my big thing. But just in terms of like, and I think the soulmate thing, just like totally like yes, that's exactly what I've been worrying about. But I mean the stuff that I write is genre, but it's not always like a bumper sticker genre, and so yeah, I mean I guess that's what I sort of worry about is and I've always sort of thought like, oh, this was like nothing I read is ever going to be like super popular, and that's okay. Like it'll probably just be fringe.
Look for publishers look for publishing houses that publish what you might categorize yourself as, even to some small degree. Those are the editors you might want to work with. Ask them if they're not looking, ask them for recommendations. Network.
And when you get back that first manuscript that's just bleeding red, then cry for a couple days and say like, they just criticized my baby and it's so beautiful, and then cry and do whatever you need to do, but then just say, all right, this is my first reader and this is the first reader's thoughts on it, so you better respect that, you know, and love the red. And
yes, if you can
really
manage it.
Take each edit to heart, but you're the author, you know, if one editors make mistakes, if that edit's off, just ignore it and go on to the next edit, you know?
Yeah, when you get that manuscript and it's been bled on, you know, you want to cry. If you can, rejoice. Because what that means is the editor has fixed this. And you're going to go in and make it good. That's the editor's job. So if it comes back and he's got like 3 marks, you're like, you're fired. Because I know.
Or that sort of thing. So that's generally how I look, just contextual.
Usually once I've broken a novel down into an outline and split it out into chapters, I will write a chapter a day until I'm done. And I usually take 2 days off a week and write the rest of it. That's about, I don't know, chapter sizes vary, but for me it's about 3,000 to 4,000 words. And it's gotten to the point now where I'll notice, you know, I'll know, okay, the time to wrap this chapter up, and I'll do a word count, it's, you know, 29.9. Oh yeah, time to wrap it up. Your brain will do that for you. It's amazing how powerful your brain is. But yeah, then once I'm done with the book, I'll do the editing, but I'll start on an outline for a new book, so it just repeats.
I really like writing scene by scene, because each scene is a story in itself. It should have a beginning, middle, end, and then it should have the same like feel and flow. So I write usually 4 hours a day, and I just try to get that scene right. You know, usually it comes out about 2,000 to 3,000 words, but sometimes we only write 1,000 words, or sometimes I'll write like 6,000. Like it just depends on that scene.
4 hours a day, that reminds me that no matter what I'm doing creatively, if I'm drawing or writing a comic or writing prose, I find that about 4 hours of concentrated, actually 100% on task is about all I can do. And if you tell a lot of people that, they go, oh my God, that's pathetic. But if you really drill them about how much actual 100% focus time they spend at their job, I doubt between getting coffees and smoke breaks and all, 4 hours fries me pretty good, and I become less and less productive in the point of silliness.
And if you ask enough writers, you'll hear all kinds of different numbers. A buddy of mine cranks out 10,000 words a day. And that's, yeah, if I did that, I'd have to go have a lie down for a day or two. Usually, mine's about 4 hours too, and I'm cooked after that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's where you'll be. And you'll hear other writers. Now, the other writer I refer to is, he's a dumper. He just dumps words on the page and he goes back and fixes them later. I'm kind of an edit while I work kind of guy. And so whatever your style is will determine what's a fair word count. So I do 10,000 words a day. It doesn't matter. Whatever you do is what you do as long as you're doing it.
And it's not every day. I take every Sunday off no matter what, sometimes the Saturdays too. So I'm talking about work days. I don't write every day.
Hi. When I have like a few novels with a couple revisions done and several roughs, and how do you guys feel about like going to like writers conferences? I got invited to like the New York pitch one, but I couldn't go because of life. But how do you guys? Is it good to get for like submissions and meeting literary agents and publishers and stuff for like getting past the slush pile?
I found them pretty invaluable myself. I think that people will find different investments to pay off differently. But yes, I had a literary agent. I found another conference. We're not together for various reasons, but I have met people through those that are now with me and supporting me. I have met editors who have looked at my work. I have gone to workshops that have vastly improved my writing. I feel that they are, in general, worth it, to a degree. They can be the same thing as the world building element, where you can just keep going to workshops and conferences and doing all that kind of stuff to where you're getting diminishing returns. And if you're doing that instead of writing, but yes, they are a great way to connect. Period, I guess.
Sorry, I haven't been to any, so.
It's where I met my critique partners, and I mean, like, that was worth the trip for me. They were amazing, so.
So as far as like character development, no.
That's great. Use that in the book.
Do you feel it's better to like write out like I don't know, like what you want them to be and like how you want them to end up, or do you develop them as you go?
I feel like that's all for me. If I start, that's like world building for me. If I start writing a biography of a fictional character, then I'm not writing a story. So I just try to know enough about my characters to jump in and start telling a story about them. And they kind of lead me along and find themselves as they go. They can go back in their lives once they figure it out.
Yeah, the one incredibly important edit that you must do is after you finish writing your book, is to go back and fix your characters in the first couple of chapters when you didn't know them.
Right.
Because you'll find out, it doesn't matter what you think this character's role is going to be in the story. You're going to get into the story and their roles are going to change. It's like they're living people. And they're living inside your head, and you ought to be able to control them, but you can't. And you can tell when writers try to ram an idea down a character's throat because the character reads wrong. And it feels stilted, and it feels uncomfortable, and like they're not doing what they're supposed to. And when you get to the end of the book, you will know these characters. You know them well. You go back to the beginning and you go, he wouldn't say that, and you'll be able to fix all of that stuff. Obviously, it's okay to have an idea of what a character's role is or where they're going to go in the story, but understand that that might not happen. I have a writers group that I'm in, and the guy whose story we're looking at said, I just realized that this character isn't the guardian, it's the horse. And having not read a story, I'm like, okay. But the Guardian is an important character archetype, and yet it changed in the middle of his book because he realized characters moved around.
Yeah, I'm having to do the same thing with a character in one of my novels. It's a bit of a change because instead of a geeky young man, the character is going to be a woman and bisexual, and it changes a bit of the story when that happens, but it's for the better of the story, and I realize that through a lot of feedback and critiquing. So yes, you can't shoehorn what you want into a character, you have to let it evolve and then be willing to adapt.
I cannot just sit down and write a character that I hadn't profiled. That's so important to me. So it's usually as I'm editing my other manuscript, then I'll start the profile on the next book that I'm gonna write. But the most important part about the profile is writing their goals. It's not about their favorite color or their best friend in second grade. It's you write what's important to them, because on the first page that should be obvious. And then your first chapter will rock if you know the character's goals. So for me, I have to go into their history. I have to know if they spent every weekend with a loving parent or grandparent, that's important to me. Or if they just got out of jail, then why are they in jail? You need to know stuff like that. So to me, the history and character development is really important before I start the book. So I spend time on that.
I love that there's no one answer to any of these questions.
Yeah.
Your style is going to come out of what works.
And if you have a lot of characters, it's different than if you have one character.
We have time for about 2 more questions. So if you're waiting, now's the time.
What's more important to you, do you think, from a writing perspective? Beginning, ending, conclusion? Sometimes when I read, they really drag you in, and then I'm left feeling bereft at the end because the conclusion was so flat. And that isn't necessarily because they've built a universe that's going to go on, but just you feel like I was cheated.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have, that's the reason why so many books people will be yeah, the beginning was great, but I just had to put it down.
And if the beginning isn't great, no one will ever get to the end.
Right. The beginning sells your book, the ending sells you, so they'll buy your next book.
Somebody once told me you have to write the great first line. That first line, the first paragraph should make the rest of the book inevitable. And I actually tried to do that once. I succeeded in doing that once. It was way more work than it was worth. And
I always go back and write the beginning after I'm done. I go back and completely change the beginning and write a new first paragraph at least. Because then I know what my theme is and I can hammer that home at the beginning. So I did I step back.
Okay, so if you are writing something and it's really, really good, and then you get to the point where it's not over and it's not finished, but you, for the life of you, cannot figure out how to go on, and it's been sitting on your computer for 2 years and you still have nothing. I'm asking for a friend, of course. What do you do at that point? Do you give up and move on, or do you save it in your back pocket for later, or what do you do? The most extreme case of writer's block.
did you ever see people build a bridge? They build from over here, and they build from over here, and it comes together like that?
Yeah.
Go down to the ending. In your comments, you said something about it isn't where it needs to be to the end. Figure out what the end needs to be and start building backwards. And pretty soon you'll find, okay, there I can kind of, do that and make it connect. And once you've done that, now you've got some ground you can go polish, because that's going to be ugly, I can almost guarantee you.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you've got your connection.
And again, find what you love about that story. Yeah. And then write into that.
Thank you.
We got time for one quick question. No? Yes? All right.
We're good with that?
Time's up.
I was gonna yell, but I have a little voice. My question is, what does a novel look like? And what I mean by that is I type in Word. So when I print it out, at what point does it become a novel, and when is it still just a little short story? Or a long short story?
How many words do you have?
Well, the one I'm referring to, I haven't looked at in a few years, so I'm not sure. I think it was maybe around the 100-page mark. Am I still in a short story?
Yeah, that's a novella.
A novella, you said?
A novella.
Okay.
I probably won't, I